On June 20th, 2025, South Australia Police officially dropped the spelling and maths tests for new recruits. Not reduced, not adjusted, not simplified, just scrapped. That means that if you can't spell the word warrant, you can still enforce one. If you can't do basic maths, you can still calculate fines, record evidence, or even handle reports that decide whether somebody goes free or faces court. Meanwhile, you, the taxpayer, the law-abiding citizen, you are the one that's held the highest standard in everyday life. You forget to lodge your BAS on time, well, you get a fine from the ATO. You miss a Centrelink form, well, your payments get frozen. And if you mistype the number on your business records, well, you're audited. Whether you're a truck driver, a nurse, a teacher, a small business owner, a parent, or a student, your paperwork has to be flawless. Because the person enforcing the same rules, the person who is writing the report that decides whether you keep your license or whether you face charges. They don't even have to pass a Year 10 English exam. And South Australia Police have doubled down. Applicants who failed literacy and numeracy after January 1st, 2024 may be now eligible to reapply. So it is not just about lowering the bar. They're actively sweeping up people who already failed once, dusting them off and saying, hey, have another crack. That's not building strength. That's not reform. That's desperation. And let me be very clear. This isn't a rumor. This isn't a meme. This is just not some crazy tinfoil hat that I'm making up. This is actually official policy. Now, how do they sell this to the public? They say it's about making policing more accessible. They say good people shouldn't miss out over a test. They say that we need recruits, and literacy is just one of the factors. Sounds nice, sounds really inclusive, sounds practical. But really? Are you serious? Because you and I both know what's really going on. This is political theatre. It's staged performance to make it look like the problem of a recruitment can be solved with the stroke of a pen. It is much easier to drop a test than fix a broken system. It is much easier to hold the press conference about inclusion than to admit the justice system has been gutted, demoralised, and underfunded for years. Standing in front of cameras saying, we'll make the test optional, is easier standing in front of taxpayers and explaining why violent offenders keep getting out on bail. Not so easy, is it? Dropping the standards look like action. Fixing culture, training, funding, and trust. That's really messy. That's hard. That's politically risky. And so, the trick, instead of raising policing up to meet community standards, they drag the standards down to meet recruit quotas. And here is the sting in the tail. If you're paying for it, money from your taxes, money that could have funded more training, more mentoring, and more oversight, money that could have gone into recruiting competent candidates by making the job worthwhile again. But instead it's used to buy photo ops and press releases, to celebrate a policy that makes the force weaker, not stronger. It's an illusion. And illusions are dangerous, and when people are holding the power and carrying firearms, signing warrants, and deciding your future. Let me say it again. This is dumb and it's dangerous. And if you got somebody in a uniform who can't properly read legislation, they're enforcing. If you've got somebody who can't file a report without confusing names, dates, and addresses, if you got somebody who can't do basic numeracy when calculating evidence, fines, or even statements, that's not enforcement. That is chaos. And when chaos wears a badge, it doesn't just hurt criminals, it hurts everybody. It hurts the victims whose cases got thrown out because the paperwork wasn't filled correctly. It hurts the business owner whose licenses get suspended because of an officer misread compliance requirements. It hurts the firearm owner who followed the law but got a warning because of underqualified officers that interpreted the legislation differently. And it hurts good police. That's right, the good police out there. There are tons and tons of good police. And I commend you for the work that you're doing. The men and women who are doing their jobs with pride, who do have the skills, who do work under pressure, but now they have their reputation undermined because the bar has been dropped for everybody. That's not strength. This is not reform. This is rot. And it honestly has started from the top. Because this isn't just about South Australia Police. This is a bigger part of the pattern that happens across Australia. We watch institutions fail, one after the other after the other. Robo-dote. Remember that? People harassed, fined, pushed to the breaking point over debts that never existed. because somebody trusted a computer algorithm more than common sense. COVID restrictions, remember that? Rules applied inconsistently across some areas locked down as well, and others weren't. Some people were fined, others walked free, because enforcement depended less on the law and more about who was interpreting it. Health mandates, contradictory directions from one department to another, because no one could keep the rules straight, not even the people writing them. And every time that the response was the same, trust the process. But how do you trust a process when the people inside can't even pass a spelling test? This is a part of a long decline. One corner cut here, one standard drop over there, until what used to be unthinkable becomes the normal. Now, I'm going to make this personal. Imagine your house is broken into. You lose your laptop, your jewelry, your tools. You call the police. We're not even going to get into castle law. That's a whole separate matter that needs to be enforced. But an officer comes out, takes a statement, files a report. Weeks later, you go to make your insurance claim. But the officer spelt your street wrong, or they forgot to list half of the items, or the numbers don't even add up. Your claim is declined. Not because you did anything wrong, but because somebody in a uniform wasn't competent enough to do the paperwork. And you don't get an appeal to, hey, he buggered up. You don't get to say, sorry, the form was confusing. But they do. Or imagine if you're a shooter, you've done everything right. Your license, registration, compliances, safes bolted down, everything to code. An underqualified officer shows up for an inspection. They don't fully understand the legislation, and they tell you that your setup does not meet the law, the intent of the law. Now you're flagged. Now you're warned. Now you're treated like a criminal. Not because you broke the law, but because they don't understand it, and the record follows you. I have seen this time and time again, and I've lost count of the amount of people that tell me when officers turn up for inspections, they don't even know what half the equipment is. Even something as basic as a bloop tube. How long before that same misunderstanding gets someone wrongly arrested? I'm sure it happens every single day. How long before a vulnerable person, a victim of domestic violence, a child, an elder, is denied justice because a form was filed incorrectly or a statement wasn't recorded accurately? Again, I'm sure it happens every single day. I'm not talking about hypothetical. I'm talking about real right now. This is really happening. This isn't about tests. It's about trust and it's about accountability. If the surgeon doesn't know anatomy, would you get on the operating table? If a pilot doesn't know how to land, would you board a plane? And if an accountant doesn't know numeracy, would you hand over your books? So why should you accept a police officer with the power to detain, search your home, and decide your future in court who doesn't need to prove that they can read or do basic maths? Because let's be very clear, that the ripple effect is very clear. This undermines the trust in the system. It disrespects the officers who are competent. And it places the community safety below recruitment statistics. And when trust collapses, compliance collapses, you want respect for the law. Start demanding competence from the people enforcing it. This is how you lose a country. Not with a bang, not overnight, but one dropped standard at a time. One corner cut, one excuse accepted, until this new normal is so far from what is right. No one even remembers what accountability looks like. This is what is at stake right here. Not just spelling tests, not just maths, but the very idea that people in power should be held at higher standards, not lower ones. So here is what the ask. If this has honestly struck a nerve to you, don't scroll past. Send this to a mate in teaching, nursing, and small businesses because they know what it's like to be penalized for every single mistake. Share it with anybody who still believes competence matters. And if you're new here, well, subscribe because one video won't change things, but millions of Australians demanding better, that just might. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.